The entire future of the Philadelphia 76ers organization continues to be put on pause as they wait for the status of Joel Embiid. His knee injuries continue to linger, and we have some recent news regarding the status of what a possible solution and what the surgical procedure should look like. With Embiid's season seemingly set to be shut down for the year, following him missing last night's game against the Chicago Bulls, and some concerning news about some of the tactics being gone on, I do think this is the beginning of the end of Joel Embiid for this specific season. But unfortunately, do think the Sixers franchise is married to him moving forward. I'm going to break down exactly why that is the case and what we do have as far as news. So to dive right into things, I'm going to start out with this from the Philly Inquirer. It says Joel Embiid could undergo a meniscus replacement procedure or a procedure where doctors break a bone in the hip to realign the joint and alleviate pressure. Quote, the same Sixer who made orbital bone fracture and navicular bone fracture common phrases in Philadelphia sports lexicon, he's had two of each, might soon add one of these: meniscus replacement, low-dose radiation therapy, or even the ominous-sounding osteotomy, I think is how you say that, in which doctors break a bone in the hip to realign the joint to alleviate pressure. One source called the procedure radical in light of the mundane injury and surgery that brought Embiid to this point. For some reason, what should have been a routine rehab and routine return to play has gone horribly wrong. And this is not the type of surgery that we do want to get into here. And that's sort of the root of this entire issue. There is not the specific injury and surgical fix here. The Sixers, and Joel Embiid specifically, are evaluating what the best possible chance of getting him back to playing at a high level. There is not that clear pathway in front of him. This is not a simple cause and effect that they can address, and clearly we're seeing them venture into some pretty experimental just procedures and options at this point. Now, when factoring in how the season has gone off the rails here, a great root of the tension has been a lot of this behind-the-scenes conversations between Embiid and the organization. It is quite clear that they do not see eye to eye on how things stack up or what the best route is from here. I thought there was a pretty interesting piece from Kyle Neubeck who wrote this down. Shout out to him from PHLY Sports. So bear with me for these two kind of paragraphs here as he writes, playing with little to no meniscus in your knee presents real problems, leading to things like pain and swelling that have plagued him all season. But rather than pointing to the extended rest and a later return date to fix, doctors mostly insisted that Embiid's knee would improve and mostly adjust as he played more and got out there on the knee. Over time, flare-ups with swelling became less common, for example, and Embiid would benefit from pushing the knee a bit to keep establishing new baselines over time. It was not meant to be instant recovery, but a period of acclimation. As other parts of his knee grow harder/stronger, symptoms become less frequent and less impactful. During that same period, doctors provided Embiid with a range of options to either supplement the get reps prescription or provide an alternative to that path. In the short term, the team and Embiid ultimately went with the least invasive, lowest risk options to help with his recovery. Sources said he added extra vitamins and supplements, received regular injections to the knee, and also made tweaks to his diet as part of a mission to shed weight and put less stress on his lower extremities. As it was described to PHLY, the options Embiid has turned to for most of the season have had no real downside, but the path has resulted in what we all see: stagnation at best and regression at worst. There was, sources say, at least some disagreement between Embiid and the team regarding what the right path forward was when options were described to him before last season. But that wasn't a fight, rather a player being open to anything that might change his fortune. Embiid had struggled physically and mentally for most of last year, something he was open about publicly when discussing his post-surgery form. So when doctors presented the higher-risk options to Embiid as part of a menu of options, Embiid was intrigued by the idea of taking a bigger swing to potentially fix or at least alleviate the issues over in a long term. So a lot to digest there, but the clear themes and the most important parts to me is this unequal eye-to-eye vision for what Joel Embiid should have done as a route of approach to recovery here. It is very clear that when you watch the version of Joel Embiid that we've seen late in the season compared to what was seen at the beginning of the year, there's been a regression in his movement. There's no way around it. That this isn't just, it isn't getting better, it's gotten worse. Look at the way he moves on the floor, the lack of trust of him trying to jump. And the other part that has to be kept in mind here is you just can't tell another human being how their body feels. Joel is the only one at the end of the day that can tell you when he has pain, if he's bending, if he's walking. There's a world where it hurts every step that he takes right now, and that is pretty frightening when thinking about the long-term ramifications of this. Now, granted, I get it from the Sixers' stance of wanting to keep the lowest risk options on the table to prioritize that because, for example, if the surgery was to go wrong, there is no recovery from that. At least at this stage in the game, they've tried this. Now, with this not working, you can move on to the next options. And in an ideal world, that would have. But I kind of haven't bought into this concept of, it'll just get better with playing through it throughout. And I also, once again, I've said this before on here, but I can firsthand say that the beginning of the season that he missed, that was Joel Embiid's call. That was him saying, I'm not ready. The organization believing that he would be, and they kind of covered up with this ramp-up plan is what the buzzword became because of those exact situations. Now, to continue on in Kyle's article, I do think this part was relevant as well, that he writes, for example, over the last 5 years, studies have been conducted on reintroducing a low-dose radiation treatment for people experiencing knee pain, non-specifically in patients with arthritis pain. Radiation was previously used by the U.S. doctors to treat joint pain in the 1960s and 70s before being replaced by other methods, and it's a non-invasive approach to pain management. But given that most recipients of said treatment tend to be older and not pro athletes, it's untested as a method to treat someone who would be severely impacted by fatigue or other side effects. On paper, there are surgical options, though they don't directly address the issue and instead try to work around it. On the higher end of the risk spectrum is I just can't say this medical word, my fault here. In layman's term, a surgery where doctors cut and reshape your bones to take pressure off of damaged joints. While this is largely viewed as an effective strategy for quality of life purposes in older patients, helping people to avoid knee replacement surgery, it is less proven as a means to treat high-end athletes and return to their previous form. You also run the risk of the bones may not heal or align properly, which has implications beyond the knee. Many fans have pointed to Lonzo Ball, the Chicago Bulls guard, as a potential model for Embiid to follow. After dealing with repetitive knee issues and struggling to find a straightforward solution, Ball underwent a full meniscus transplant and made his return to the floor this season. Notably, Ball played his first game roughly 10 months after roughly 19 months after his procedure, and has been limited to a lower minute, lower effectiveness role on a bad Bulls team. He is yet to play at least 30 minutes in a game this season, and to my knowledge, this is not a procedure that has even been presented to Embiid as an option for what he's dealing with. Notably, most examples of what could be done to help Embiid don't actually add anything to the knee and put a bow on the problem. Instead, they are attempts to manage and reduce the symptoms that force him to sit or make him ineffective when he plays. And this is the root of all of those issues. A ton more good stuff here. Now, for starters, this bone realignment surgery sounds scary to me, and it's scary from both like a normal human being standpoint and an athlete standpoint. That these are things that Joel Embiid has to keep in mind here, and I understand a lot of us are not going to be sympathetic as the focus is on how can he help this basketball team. But Joel Embiid's still a human being, man. He's still got kids, he's got a wife, he's got a future, he's going to live life when he retires, and you got to keep those in mind for these type of ramifications. And now for the actual concept of returning to the floor here, like, it's going to be a grind, man. It's going to be tough, and there is no guarantee. And for this Lonzo Ball surgery, being away from the game for 19 months, let's just think about that for a second for Joel Embiid. And by the way, that was done with Lonzo Ball, who's about 6'3", 170 pounds. Joel Embiid, 7'2", and close to 300 on some occasions here. So it's not exactly the same. And Lonzo Ball left last night's game with an injury as well. It hasn't exactly been this 100% version of working. Shout out to him for being back on the floor. Do love Lonzo Ball. We'll be rooting for him. But I don't think this is the carbon copy model of what they should be trying to replicate here. We still don't have full evidence that this worked in Lonzo, and there's far more risk for Joel Embiid specific. So the frightening realization for all of this is that there isn't a clean fix. This is kind of all gasping at straws, and this is going to be something these Sixers have to address here. For everyone that says it's over for Joel Embiid, there's no way they can win, they have to find a way to move on, I hear you. But when you walk through that realistically, where do you go from here? Let's talk about trading Joel Embiid. Well, to do that, you got to bring up the contract, and to label that exactly, there is still a lot of time on his deal that he's on the books for not just next season, but the following year, the following year, the following year, and then a player option in the 28-29 season there. Yeah, I think he's going to pick up that player option here. And for those trade conversations, every other team in the NBA sees exactly what we see. They read the same reports that we do, and they've watched him on the floor not look like the version of Joel Embiid that is himself. To reference his stats for the season, and I assume this will be how they wrap up, as I do not expect him to return to the floor at any point this year. 23.8 points per game, 8.2 rebounds, 4.5 assists, just 29.9% from three, 44.4% from the floor. That is not Joel Embiid. And while I understand that those would be ridiculously impressive stats by the definition of a lot of different NBA players, Not for Joel, man. That is not a franchise foundation. That is not a centerpiece. That is not an MVP candidate. And we don't fully know if that guy is still in there or can return. That is the frightening thought. Before this Sixers franchise, you do have that amount of money committed to Joel Embiid. You have built this core with Tyrese Maxey, with Paul George, with Jared McCain up next, and you have no choice but to do whatever is possible to get him back to 100%. If that means shutting him down for the remainder of the season, if that means missing all of next season, those are kind of the steps that you do have to take. Whatever is the right approach or gives you the best chance of getting him the closest to 100% again, you have to take those steps, even if that means chalking up next year. And next year turns into more of an evaluation of what does a Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain backcourt look like? Is there a top 6 pick that the Sixers were able to luck into in the lottery? And another key piece, so you can see how he's a part of this equation, whether that is Ace Bailey, whether it is Cooper Flag, DJ Edgecombe, whoever you want to name from this draft. Those are the questions that might need to be addressed next year. But the reality is, for Joel specifically, there just has to find something. They have to take their best possible chance at that. I don't care how long the pushback is. And I do see a world where even Joel Embiid, not the 100% version of himself, can still be an impactful player. I do see a world where Jared McCain and Tyrese Maxey are the lifebloods of this team, where Paul George is more or less a role player in the background. We have other guys that contribute, and then Embiid could be a potential final touch, that even a 75% version of himself, if he can play at that, can provide positive minutes and be one of the better centers in the league. But these are all things that we're just hoping for at this point. There has to be some more concrete answers. And for Joel specifically, I still have a great deal of sympathy for the guy. These are really tough times, man. And I understand he's made a ton of money. He's had success. He's had a very plentiful career by most NBA player standards, even without the postseason success that is always going to haunt him there. But he's still a human being, man. These are really tough things to deal with from an individual standpoint. It has to hurt on a day-to-day basis. And it's also just a scary thought of realizing, like, I may never be me again. That's tough to deal with. So to Joel specifically, do hope he is dealing with this. I know he's been quite open about some of the mental difficulties in the past. I can't imagine this one is any easier. And do hope that he is hanging in there. So shout out to Joel Embiid. Not the news that we did want to hear for the Sixers team. I do expect we'll continue to get more and more on this particular topic of conversation here, but we'll see how it all shakes out. And I'll be with you right here on Sixers Digest, breaking things down every step of the way. So we are now cheering for Sixers losses. We are rooting for Raptors wins. We are rooting for Hornets wins, and we are chasing these lottery odds. That's how my focus has shifted here on Sixers Digest, but going to keep things rocking as much as possible. So prayers up to Joel Embiid. Appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in this video. And if you have not already, make sure you are smashing that subscribe button on the channel. Drop a like if you feel I earned it in this video, if you feel that way. So appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. As always, want to keep this Sixers Digest family growing as big as possible. I'm still going to be here regardless of how this season transpires. So appreciate each and every one of you guys, and talk with you next time. Peace.